Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for watching. Today we're going to talk about a very controversial topic, and that is, why do so many people hate the 40 Smith & Wesson? So actually, before I started this YouTube channel, I'd only shot the 40 a couple times, and I had no desire to ever own a 40, and that's mainly because of what I had seen on YouTube and all across the internet, and people kind of bashing the 40 caliber pistols. But shortly after I started the channel, I got requests from a bunch of you guys actually to test the 40, and I realized that a lot more people have 40 caliber pistols than I originally thought. So I went ahead and bought one. This is the Glock 23. This is still the only 40 caliber pistol that I own. It's a great gun. I actually like it quite a bit. But still, every time I post videos on the 40 caliber, I get a few comments from people saying that the 40 is an obsolete caliber. And it's not just keyboard warriors on the internet. There's actually a bunch of well-known, respected instructors that kind of bash the 40. And I thought today we would explore this topic a little bit and go over why the 40 is such a hated caliber, and is there actually any merit to it? All right, so I'm not going to go into a bunch of history on the caliber. I'm sure there's other videos out there that do that really well, but basically the 40 was designed primarily as a cartridge for law enforcement after the 1986 Miami-Dade shootout, where obviously a bunch of cops were injured and even killed. At the time, I believe they were using the .38 special revolvers, and they didn't like the way that gunfight panned out, so they started looking into semi-automatic calibers to replace their .38 special revolvers, and that's when the 40 was kind of designed. It was years later that they adopted it, but that was the beginning of the 40 Smith & Wesson. From what I understand, they wanted a caliber that kind of replicated the 10mm ballistics without the large guns and the added recoil that comes along with the 10mm, so they designed a cartridge that would fit and a 9mm frame, and drop that recoil down quite a bit, and that is when the 40 caliber Glocks started coming around. And to this day, most of the cops that I see, at least around where I live, are carrying Glock 22s, which is the full-size 40 caliber Glock. So they're still really popular in law enforcement. I have heard lately that a lot of police departments are going back to the 9mm, and that's the main argument against the 40 Smith & Wesson right there, is the 9mm. Because the 9mm is so common and so popular and everything is so available for that caliber, most people just kind of don't see a reason for the 40, and they choose the 9mm over the 40 Smith & Wesson. And personally, that is the route that I took, mainly because of stuff that I had seen on the internet. And I will say I do still prefer the 9mm. I'm so heavily invested in the guns, and I've got so many rounds through 9mm handguns. It's just the caliber that I prefer, and I don't see a tremendous advantage in switching everything over from a 9 to a 40, because the 9 is still overall my favorite handgun caliber. And I think these comparisons between the 9 and the 40, when you weigh the pros and cons of each, are where most people end up choosing the 9mm and kind of consider the 40 to be obsolete. Now, why all the angry hate about it, I really don't know, but number one is going to be capacity. So in a handgun, capacity is limited as it is, and most people would prefer as many rounds as they can get in the magazine of their handgun, whether it's a carry gun or a bedside gun or whatever it is. More rounds is always better. So this is the Glock 23. This gun right here holds 13 plus 1, so 14 rounds and a compact handgun, and the equivalent to this, the Glock 19 in 9mm, holds 15 plus 1, so you get 2 more rounds. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is, especially when you're only getting 14 to 16. 2 rounds could make all the difference. So right off the bat, the 40 is at a disadvantage in capacity when you compare it to the 9mm, and most people don't consider the small ballistic advantage that you get from the 40 worth that capacity difference. Number two, and equally as important in my opinion, is the recoil of the 40 Smith & Wesson. So for a long time I heard on the internet that the 40 was a high pressure round. I made a video several months ago and was quickly corrected by you guys in the comments that it's actually not a high pressure round. It's the exact same as a 9mm, but it does have more recoil. That's just a fact. It's much more snappy than a 9mm, and that recoil is noticeable. Now, they may have changed this now, but another thing I heard on the internet, so this might be untrue, is that the original 40 caliber Glocks were not lasting as long, and they were having more parts breakages than the 9mm guns because of the recoil of that round was just kind of beating the gun apart a little bit quicker. They might have just thrown a 40 caliber barrel in a 9mm gun because the guns are identical in size. So I don't know how true that is. Most people would never shoot enough rounds in their entire lifetime to see parts breakages like that anyways, so I don't consider that to be a serious downside. But one big downside is follow-up shots. So with the 40 Smith & Wesson, it's just a fact that it does have more muzzle flip, and it's just a snappier caliber to shoot. If you shoot it enough, then yes, you're going to be, very good at follow-up shots and be able to shoot these guns quickly and accurately, and would be plenty capable of using this gun for self-defense. But you would still be faster with a 9mm, and it still has significantly less recoil than the 40. Now, it's not a big enough difference where you're gonna, shoot the 9 well and shoot the 40 horribly. It's not that big of a difference, but it's definitely a difference. And I know with me, I do shoot the 9 quite a bit better quickly than I do the 40. So the recoil of the 40 is definitely a disadvantage when you compare it to the 9mm. They just kick a little bit harder. And again, most people don't consider the upgrade to the 40 to be worth that increase in recoil. The third disadvantage of the 40 Smith & Wesson is ammo availability and just accessories in general. The 9mm is so popular and so common that they just have incredible amounts of ammo and accessories available for the 9mm. Now the 40 is catching up, and there's a lot of good ammo out there for the 40 as well. It's not like, the 9 is in a completely different league, but it kind of is. I mean, the 9mm it's by far the most popular handgun caliber, at least I would assume, and there's a lot more options for ammo and accessories than there are in the 40. The 40 is also more expensive, so not only does it hold fewer rounds in the gun, but it's also more expensive cost per round than the 9mm as well. Now, I don't think it's as much as like a 45 ACP or nothing like that, but it's definitely more expensive than the 9mm. And again, it goes back to whether or not you consider the upgrade to the 40 to be big enough to justify all this stuff. It seems like most people end up choosing the 9mm, but those are the main things that kind of turn people off of the 40 Smith & Wesson. All right, so you guys probably know where I land on all this by now. I love the 40, don't get me wrong, but I definitely do prefer the 9mm. But we're gonna go shoot each of these guns. I have the Glock 23. This is obviously our 40 caliber pistol, and then I have a couple 9mm that we're gonna shoot as well, and then one surprise caliber that we'll throw in at the end. But we're gonna put this recoil theory to the test and see if the 40 Smith & Wesson is deserving of all the hate. All right, so we're gonna shoot each of these guns and try and get an idea of the difference in recoil and muzzle blast and how easy they are to shoot and all that stuff. So I have my slow-mo camera off to the side here, and I wanna try to run in some close-ups of how each of these guns recoil, at least in my hand. Your experience may vary, but we're gonna start with the 9mm and see how it does. I think I was going a little high on that small target. You can see on the big target how my group is kind of up and to the left, so don't know if it's the ammo or the gun. I've never seen that before. So I've shot the 9mm to death, basically. I'm really used to the recoil and the muzzle blast and all that. To me, it's probably the best compromise for, bullet effectiveness and recoil. It's just really comfortable to shoot. Let's try the 40. All right, 40 Smith & Wesson out of the Glock 23. By the way, I'm only putting 10 rounds in these magazines. Obviously the guns hold more, but for the sake of the video, we're doing 10s. I don't know if I got an early Gen 4 Glock 23, but the ejection pattern is super crazy on this gun. I know the early Gen 4s had ejector problems, like they fixed a lot of them. I've never had reliability issues with it, but the ejection pattern is just all over the place. I get hit in the head every time I shoot this gun. All right, so the Glock 17 is obviously a full-size 9mm, and the Glock 23 is a compact 40. So the recoil comparison could be a little unfair. I don't notice a big difference when I switch from full-size to compact Glocks. They feel about the same to me. But just to be safe, I brought out the SIG P365 XL. This is a 9mm, small little carry gun, much smaller than the Glock 23, and we're gonna see how the 9mm recoils out of a gun this size, just so we have a fair comparison to the 40. All right, it's got a red dot on it, so it's quite a bit different shooting this after using those iron sights. I'm still not used to this thing all the way. So I don't know how the slow-mo is gonna look, but to me it still feels quite a bit softer than the Glock 23. So while we're out here, I have one more caliber that I wanna shoot, because this is another one that a lot of people consider quite a big upgrade from the 9mm. So this is the Glock 20 10mm pistol. Big thanks to Turtle Lake Tactical for sending this out. I'm actually in the process of getting some new ballistics gel, and we're gonna test the crap out of the 10mm while we have this gun. But the recoil on this surprised me. I thought it would be quite a bit, you know, worse than it was. It wasn't too bad. So probably still a little bit more than the 40, but we're gonna shoot this and see how it compares. It's a big ass gun, I'll say that. Oh yeah. Definitely a difference after shooting the 9 and the 40. All right, guys, so the bottom line is both the 9 and the 40 are great handgun calibers in my opinion. This might sound kind of weird coming from me because I do a lot of splitting hairs with ammo here on the channel, but I think people tend to get way too caught up in ballistics and caliber debates and stuff like that, when the bottom line is there's very small differences between the two. And self-defense and, you know, ballistics, there's just so many variables that go into that. You cannot count on consistent results from one self-defense case to another. There's so many variables that go into that, and it's kind of splitting hairs when you're talking about the 9 and the 40. So I can see why 9mm guys would consider the 40 to be obsolete, because the 9mm does about the same thing. The 40 is, you know, a little bit more powerful, and in some cases you might see a benefit from that, but in other cases you probably won't. And the same thing goes for the reverse side. If you already have the 40, I don't really see a need to get into the 9mm. Just shoot that 40, you know, use it for self-defense. It's a great handgun and it's a great caliber. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to which one you prefer and which one you shoot better. I know I would not want to be on the receiving end of either one of these calibers. They both would serve the purpose of self-defense really well. So let me know down in the comments how you guys feel about this. Please keep it friendly. This can become a pretty heated debate on the internet between the 9 and the 40. Like I said, at the end of the day, guys, it's not that big of a difference, and they both are really great calibers. So hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please hit that like button for me. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.